Let me read to you a passage from the 21st chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 23 to 27. It's the Gospel for Monday of the third week in Advent, Year B. St. Matthew writes, Jesus entered the temple courts, and while he was teaching, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him. "By what authority are you doing these things?" they asked. "And who gave you this authority?" Jesus replied, "I will also ask you one question. If you answer me, I will tell you by what authority I am doing these things. John's baptism, where did it come from? Was it from heaven or from men?" They discussed it among themselves and said, "If we say from heaven, he will ask, 'Then why didn't you believe him?' But if we say from men, we are afraid of the people, for they all hold that John was a prophet." So they answered Jesus, "We don't know." Then he said, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." That's from Matthew chapter 21, verses 23 to 27. And what does it suggest to us? Well, the Gospels tell us that on various occasions during our Lord's public ministry, the people marvelled at his works and at his teaching. They were astonished at the authority he showed. For instance, in the way he could command the spirits to depart from a possessed man, in the way he could release a person from this or that ailment, and the authority he displayed in his teaching. In respect to his teaching, they said that he spoke with authority and not like the scribes. You know, the scribes would teach and support their teaching by appeals to various authorities, the authority of the scriptures and to other authorities as well, authorities that commented on the scriptures. They did not, of course, consider that an appeal to their own authority would suffice, but bolstered their case by pointing to the support of others. And so it is, of course, in most of human thought. Even where there may be no other authorities to which one may appeal, at least there is the authority of one's own reasoning, the reasons one gives. The listener may examine the reasoning and see whether the reasons support what one is saying. But in some way, Christ, while providing reasons and supporting what he said with miracles, and while pointing to the teaching of the scriptures, nevertheless presented himself progressively as having complete and independent authority to teach and act in the name of God. In the Sermon on the Mount, he referred to what had been handed down, and then he proceeded to expound his own teaching, saying, "Such and such has been said to you, but I say this to you." On his own authority, he expelled demons and raised the dead to life. He taught breathtaking doctrines on his own authority, such as the doctrine of the Eucharist in the synagogue of Capernaum. He expected faith in him to lead to assent, not the weight of supporting authorities. The way he taught, the power he displayed, the authority he exercised was beyond other authorities. Though he could point to authorities that supported him, he acted and taught as if he knew he had full authority in himself, needing absolutely no one to support him. And this is exactly what the leaders of the Jews could see so very clearly. And it went right against all they were familiar with and required. And so it is that, as our Gospel shows, they came to demand from our Lord an explicit account of the authorization he had for his work and especially for his teaching. Our Lord could point to many things that supported his authority, but on this occasion he obliquely appointed to one. That was the word of John the Baptist, as we heard in the Gospel. Our Lord knew that those who were questioning him were entirely unwilling to accept his authority, no matter what the support for it might be. Whatever he said, it would become the occasion of further argument and rejection. So he simply asked them, where did John's baptism and ministry come from? Was it of God or of man? Was John a true prophet? And was his ministry divinely appointed? Of course, the people knew that John was a prophet, but the leaders would not acknowledge this. We remember how the leaders had sent representatives to ask John who he was. And on that very occasion, he, John, abasing himself before God and men, had pointed to the Messiah who was coming and who was already in their midst. Our gospel passage today not only implies that the leaders of the Jews did not accept John as a prophet, but they knew that John had pointed to Jesus as the promised Messiah. So the chief priests and elders, coming formally to ask our Lord for an account of his authority for all his activities, and undoubtedly intending to try to trap him in the process, found themselves trapped by our Lord's quick and decisive question. They could either accept John as a prophet, and so the authority of Jesus himself, or be condemned and rejected by the people. They withdrew, with Christ being once again triumphant in debate. Christ had, though, in effect, pointed to one of many incontestable witnesses to his own supreme authority, John, and by implication, the prophets who were before him. Our Lord pointed to their testimony that he was the Messiah long foretold. He did not depend on them for his authorization, but they did support his authority. One of the most distinctive features of our Lord's ministry, right up to and during his passion, was his manifest authority. He was and is the ultimate authority upon which man can rely for truth and for salvation. He is the rock on which we can depend. He is the invisible rock of the church, and he appointed Simon Peter as the visible rock who would represent him. And to him, Simon, the rock, he gave the keys of the kingdom of heaven. The church's authority comes from Christ and depends on Christ. When he rose from the dead, he told his disciples that to him had been given all authority in heaven and on earth. They then were to go to the whole world and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them, teaching all that he had commanded. Christ's authority is supreme.